What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You're going to get a free $15 to spend on magic cards, and you'll be supporting the channel when you do that. You can also just become a patron and become a part of the weekly voted Deck Tech. It's all on Discord and we have a lot of fun doing it. Additionally, you can just like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. Special shout out to my high contributing patrons. Newsom, you rock. Now, let's get into today's Deck Tech with Volrath. And this is an extremely powerful commander I've been meaning to build for a while now. He just kept getting thrown to the back burner. I'm kind of regretting not building him sooner because, oh my gosh, this guy has a ton of crazy interactions that I'm excited to share. The first thing we're going to be trying to do with this deck is create more copies of our commander, which is usually a problem due to the legendary rule. But if we have something like a Scute Swarm on the battlefield, we can turn Volrath into a Scute Swarm, drop a land, and get a 7/5 copy of Scute Swarm. That additionally does keep the ability to turn into any creature. So that's going to be extremely busted. And then we actually will be able to abuse the legend rule in this deck as well. Say we have Ukima on the battlefield, we can turn our Scute Swarm that we just created into a 7/5 Ukima, instantly sack it or it dies to the legend rule, and then deal 7 damage to someone's face. If that's not your speed, we can also do that with Toothy. Turn that same Scute Swarm copy into a copy of Toothy, it dies instantly, and then we draw 7 cards. Like I said, there's just a lot of really abusable things we can do with this commander that are going to be extremely fun and broken at the same time. Additionally, we can use stuff like Master Biomancer to just turn all of our, or have all of our creatures enter with 7 counters on them right away. So that's going to get rid of the need for having to put counters on our creatures while just giving us a massive board state. We can also do some pretty funny stuff with the negative counters in this deck. We are running a Hapatra, so we get free snakes, and then when we pair Hapatra with Yawgmoth Thran Physician, we essentially get to make a free Necropotence that just kills creatures on the board. So again, a lot of broken stuff we're doing with this deck, abusing a lot of weird legendary rules shenanigans. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. Let's kick it off by talking about the creatures that generate a ton of value when we turn Volrath into them. Marwyn the Nurturer, Hornblade Elite, Viridian Joiner, and Kami of Whispered Hopes are all cards that can generate a ton of mana whenever they have 7 power. Master Biomancer and Arwen are also amazing. Now whenever our creatures enter the battlefield, they're either going to enter with 7 or 5 1/1 counters, which is insane. Then we have our creatures that can create token copies of themselves. That way we can get more 7/5 creatures that can turn themselves into any creature on the battlefield with a counter. Biowaste Blob, Scute Swarm, and Compi Swarm are all amazing at this. Additionally, we have Watchful Radstag, Spawn Wraith, and Mist Syndicate Naga. Lathril Blade of Elves just seemed really broken at 7 power, so I thought I'd shove her in here, and honestly, if we connect once or twice, that will put us over the 10 elves threshold, and we can start dealing a ton of damage to our opponents. Ukima, again, this is one of those funny cards in the deck that we can utilize the legend rule to just deal a ton of damage to our opponents. Now that we have a 7/5 Scute Swarm copy that's 7 power and can turn itself into any creature, we just turn that Scute Swarm into Ukima, sacrifice it due to the legend rule, and deal 7 damage to someone's face, and then gain 7 life. Cold-Eyed Selkie and Curie are also very broken if they just so happen to have 7 power. Now we can get a fresh new hand every time we connect with these. That's going to be busted. Purr and Toothy. Now, Purr is in the deck just to double up on those counters or add additional counters to our creatures, but Toothy is in the deck again for that broken legendary rule. All we have to do, again, turn one of those Scute Swarms into a copy of Toothy and draw a fresh new grip. 1 mana, draw 7 seems pretty busted. Moving on to the core of the deck, we have our negative counter synergies with Hapatra and Nest of Scarabs. Notably, when you pair these cards with Yawgmoth Thran Physician, you essentially make a Necropotence that wipes your opponent's boards. Now, you will have to pay life every time you activate it, so this is limited, but we do have a couple ways to gain life in the deck, so enjoy that. Massacre Girl is also solid in this deck. Just giving all of our creatures Wither is powerful enough, and then we're drawing cards whenever those creatures die. We do have a couple different ways to just wipe the board with negative counters as well, such as Toxic Deluge, so there's a lot of synergy here, and we will draw a lot of cards with this girl on the battlefield. The Scarab God. Now this guy's just in here to get any creatures we need back from the graveyard. He's very useful. We generate a ton of mana in this deck, so he's just a solid include overall. Likeness Looter, again, we can just discard one of our cards, or if a card dies, we can just turn Likeness Looter into a copy of that card, and it's just going to be solid recursion and get us what we need in a deck that's just trying to copy our most broken creatures. The Mimeoplasm just creates some very good scenarios for us, like imagine reanimating a Viridian Joiner with the biggest creature from anybody's graveyard. That's just going to be a lot of value. He's kind of just like a second commander in this deck. Eternal Witness to get any of our key pieces back from the graveyard. Invasion of Ikoria, again, this can grab stuff from the graveyard, and additionally it flips into that massive dino that's pretty broken. Ripple of Potential and Heroic Intervention. We are committing a lot to the board in this deck, so your opponents are going to be trying to wipe it as soon as possible and as often as possible. So if we can dodge it while having that board wipe go through for them, it's just going to create a massive imbalance, and we're going to win the game shortly after that. Toxtro the Corrosive, this guy's busted, he synergizes with the negative counters, and he draws us a ton of cards. If this guy lasts like 2 rotations, you'll most likely win the game. The last thing we really need to do to ensure this deck works is put counters on our creatures. Anduril is honestly a really busted card. This puts a ton of counters on your creatures. Defiler of Vigor, very similar, just buffs up your entire board state every time you cast a creature with a green pip essentially. Renata makes it to where they all enter in with a counter. The Great Henge does the same thing while drawing you cards and adding mana. Tribute to the World Tree works perfectly in this deck. Whenever we're trying to turn our commander into something like a Scute Swarm, it's perfect because it puts counters on Scute Swarm, and then late game when we already have token copies of Scute Swarms that are 7/5s, it's drawing us a ton of cards. Biophagus, just super simple. If you cast a creature using his mana, they enter with a 1/1 counter. The Ozolith is not only going to add more counters to our creatures whenever we put counters on them, but additionally it puts counters on them itself, so it's perfect in the deck. Fight Rigging, a little bit of card advantage, a little bit of putting counters on your creatures. It's perfect, especially when our commander is already 7 power. This triggers almost immediately, so you do get immediate value off of it. Court of Garenberg can make some massive creatures extremely fast. You get to put counters on your creatures, then double the number of counters on your creatures. It's absolutely insane. Ancient's Toolkit, now notably, we only care about counters on the creatures. Our commander doesn't care that they're 1/1 counters, so we're just going to take these broken counters and put them on our most broken creatures that can utilize them, such as Flying, Death Touch, Shield, whatever we need, and then we can turn our commander into a copy of that creature. One last thing I want to hammer home with this category is it's going to make all of our creatures that seem useless in the deck useful without our commander becoming a token copy of them. Lathril can get bigger now, Ukima can get bigger now, Curie can get bigger now. It's just going to make the deck more viable overall, making it to where we don't always need our commander on the battlefield. Moving on to the vegetables, we have our card advantage with Rishkar's Expertise. Greater Good's also going to be good in this deck since we're going to have disposable 7/5s. Gurek's Uprising, Trample's notable, again when we're creating token copies of Scute Swarms that are 7/5s, this is going to draw us a ton of cards. Return to the Wild Speaker, more card advantage, our commander is 7 power, and then Windfall's just really good. The ramp is also pretty simple. We have Incubation Druid. It's not going to be very hard to get a counter on Incubation Druid in this deck. Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 visits. We're also on Kodama's Reach and Cultivate. I like running these cards when our commander is like at 5 mana. This will ensure that we do get enough mana to cast our commander as long as one of these is in our opening hand. They also work extremely well with Scute Swarm. And then we have Soul Ring. Moving on to our interaction, we have an Offer You Can't Refuse, Swan Song, and Arcane Denial. We also are on Glenalindra Archmage. You know me, if we're playing 1/1 counters, we're putting her in the deck. It's going to be very easy to get rid of that negative counter and make it to where we have pseudo infinite counter spells. Resculpt's been extremely useful, especially when people are running the One Ring. Beast Within, very useful as well. Nature's Claim, just all very efficient removal. Bane of Progress to hate out those enchantment and artifact strategies. Toxic Deluge, again, pairs really well with the deck, especially when we're running stuff like Massacre Girl, Cyclonic Rift as the ultimate reset button that doesn't reset us. With that being said, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you love these deck techs, the support is really appreciated. I would like to thank my high contributing patrons. Newsome, Prater, Excessum, Chicken Salad, you guys are amazing. I appreciate all the support. With that being said, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.